The PR business is dictated by how the economy is doing, right? Because if consumers aren't buying products and then brands don't have as much money to promote products, PR is one of those line items that generally gets cut during difficult times. The lessons that I learned is control your overhead. Sometimes in New York, that's hard because office space is expensive. Control your overhead, manage your expenses, be smart about how you spend money that's not billable back to clients. So in terms of your travel for business development and things of that nature. What helped us get through all those times was we've always had a core group of clients, 10 or 12 clients that have been with us for a long time. And even though they may have asked us to kind of cut our budgets, they stayed with us during those difficult times. And then we were able to kind of, grow that business once the economy got better. It's all cyclical, and it's never going to be as good as you think it is when it's good, and it's never going to be as bad as you think it is when it's bad.
Hey, let's welcome Bill Southard, who's a CEO at Southard Communications. Welcome to the show, sir. Good to see you.
Thank you, Danny. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Well, it looks like you've been the founder, the CEO of your company for over 30 years. Is that right?
Yeah, I founded the agency in June of 1994. So we celebrated our 30th anniversary last year, so we're into our 31st year. And I started the agency after I was with another agency here in New York City for about a dozen years, and we sold that agency to the largest PR agency in the world called Shandwick. And then I stayed through my earnout and left and started Southard actually in a studio apartment in New York City in June of 94, and then moved into our first office, which was on 23rd Street about 2 months after that.
Today, I want to tell you about a book I'm reading. It's written by 25 veterans of the U.S. Armed Forces, all graduates of the Masters of Business for Veterans program at the University of Southern California. The book is called Veteran Stories of Transition and Transformation. It collects the personal stories of veterans written in their own words. Pick it up for yourself or a veteran you love. Check out the link in the description for 10% off. Very interesting. So you've had a lot of experience in brand and PR communications. How did you end up, in this space and
Yeah,
starting your own company?
sure. So my background, so I was a journalism major in college. And truthfully, I didn't even know what PR was. A lot of people didn't know what PR was when I was in college. And but I studied journalism. And then, like my junior year, we had an individual come in who had a PR background, and basically said to us, "Listen, it's taking your journalism skills, but putting it to work for clients. And by the way, you make more money than a journalist." And then I was fortunate in that a couple months after I graduated, I was able to land my first job at a small PR agency down in New Jersey, Central Jersey. And I was there for 2.5 years, kind of learned the trade. I actually learned from a back then who was like me. They had 40 years of experience. They were with a big agency. They went off on their own. And then I got an opportunity to join an agency in New York City. And we were fortunate in that I was there for 12 years. I was one of the partners. And we grew that agency from like about $1 million and 12 people over that 12-year period into about 120 people, 20 million in fees, and then we sold it. And to your question, what was interesting is at that agency, and that's kind of carried through to my firm now, we worked across a lot of different industries, a lot of different markets. So it was consumer electronics and toys and food and beverage and travel and tourism. We did corporate, public affairs, crisis communication. So that generalist background followed me when I started the agency in 94.
So over 40 years in this space, how did it evolve and change over the years, especially with the new technology emerging, all the way from the internet to AI in most recent years?
Yeah, pretty dramatically, particularly in the last 5 to 6 to 7 years. Principally how it's changed is in the old days, you would look at how do you communicate to your audience, and if you take a look at consumers, think about it. You had television, you had radio, you had newspapers, you had magazines, right? And those were the four principal outlets that we would use to help promote brand awareness, generate excitement with consumers. And if you look at the landscape now, radio is almost non-existent. I mean, not quite, but you know what I mean. Doesn't have the reach that it had at one point. Even linear TV kind of has declined, right, in terms of viewership with streaming and social media, et cetera. Papers, I mean, there's been a decline in the number of newspapers, and most of the newspapers that are read are digital, right? And obviously, like consumer magazines I was reading something, I think they've lost like 70% of consumer magazines compared to 5 years ago. So what that has required is kind of a shift in how do we communicate to these audiences, right? And as you know, social media is an incredibly important outlet. So if it's from a consumer standpoint, it's the Facebooks and Instagrams and TikTok, et cetera, as platforms to communicate with consumers. Social media for B2B, business to business audience, it's going to be LinkedIn and Twitter and other, right? So those have become a bigger part of the channels that we use to communicate to the end user. And then the other really major change is influencers, right? Digital influencers, right? And creators of content who generally have a high level of credibility with consumers. So if you look at our business, we probably spend half of our time working with influencers and half of our time working with traditional media. So the changes have really been, how do we communicate our clients' messages to consumers in an effective way? And the vehicles that we use these days have changed. And the other thing is there's a lot more clutter in the marketplace, right? There's more brands, there's more products, there's more early stage companies, entrepreneurial companies, So it's a greater challenge, I think, than it's ever been. But that's one of the biggest changes. Now, on the plus side, technology has been very supportive. So 35 years ago, we represented Sharp Electronics. We launched the first fax machine in the US, right? And that was major breakthrough. Right. We did an event in New York City where we sent the first fax from Tokyo to New York, et cetera. Nowadays, nobody uses a fax, right? It's text messages, it's email, it's DocuSign. So you're right. The technology has really transformed how we're communicating with the end users.
And also, depending on the target audience, you probably want to use different channels. If it's something targeting younger
Yeah.
audiences, it's probably all TikTok and social media.
Yeah.
Then then maybe different generations, different channels. But it goes back to the clients that you have. So just curious to learn what kinds of
Yeah.
clients you usually work with.
Yeah. And you're right. All social media channels are not created equal. To your point. And, if you look at, Facebook caters to a little bit of an older audience, right? Instagram, TikTok to a younger audience, YouTube, obviously, to a very young audience. It's interesting. We're a generalist agency in that we work across a lot of different industries and categories, but some of the bigger categories. So we do a significant amount of work in the toy and game industry. We always have we launched brands like Leapfrog and Pound Puppies. Worked on brands like Elf on a Shelf and Mensch on a Bench. For years, we worked with Toys R Us when they were around. And actually, you find this interesting. Our first client when I started the agency was Sony Electronics. And our second client was a company called the Ohio Art Company, which is best known for the Etch-a-Sketch. So we worked with Ohio Art and Etch-a-Sketch and its other brands, but Etch-a-Sketch was the primary, iconic toy product for like 25 years until they sold to a company called Spin Master. So we do a lot of work in the toy space. In fact, interestingly enough, just today, with all the issues regarding tariffs on Chinese imports, 80% of the toy products come from China. We actually commissioned a research study that we actually just released the results today that kind of took a look at how are consumers feeling about tariffs? How do they feel about increased prices for toys, et cetera? So the toy, game, collectible industry has always been a very big and active category for us. But we also do a lot in food and beverage. We do work with food and beverage brands, and we also work with a lot of companies in the natural products arena, plant-based products, et cetera. Other categories, health and wellness, beverage alcohol. We worked for more than a decade for a big German brand called Paulaner, which has Paulaner beer and a couple other. So our background is pretty diverse, pretty much as a generalist agency. Personal care products, brands like Roger and Gallet and Sierra Mola, Corrective Skin. And actually, you had Rob Cooley on And so we work with Rob and Nareem. We put together the plan and executed the PR and the social media strategy to support the launch of Nareem, which is online mattress company. And then the consumer business probably represents 80% of our business, and the other 20% is B2B, where we're marketing directly to a B2B client. But for us, sometimes I get asked, well, how did that happen? Because almost all of our leads just come through referrals. They come through current clients or previous clients or partners that we've worked with in the past or journalists, et cetera. So most of our new business comes from referrals from others. So somebody in the food and beverage industry or the beauty industry could say, hey, I'm looking for an agency. And somebody we know can say, Southard is a really good agency, senior people. They understand the media and the social landscape, and they can provide the services that you're going to need.
And how big is your company in terms of the number of employees right
Yeah.
now?
So we've got about 20 full-time account professionals. We occasionally do use some freelancers to help us with some media. And then I have a couple of operational people in terms of dealing. My oldest son actually does all of our operations and finance, et cetera. So what's interesting about the agency business is if you look at our business, you have like traditional media relations, but we also have a group that manages social media for clients. We have a group that manages influencer communications. And then we also have a group that does paid digital, so paid Meta, Facebook, Instagram, et cetera.
How do you organize work? Do you have all of your employees in office? Do they work remotely?
Yeah.
I guess with freelancers, it's more remote
Yeah.
always. But
No, so we have an office down on Fulton Street in New York City, Fulton between Nassau and Broadway. But COVID really changed the landscape and the attitudes towards people coming into the office. Particularly New York City because it's expensive to get in, and if you live outside the city, it can take you an hour and a half, one way, so it's 3 hours round trip. So starting with COVID, where we kind of, everybody worked from home, that's kind of still been how we've worked. Our employees mostly work from home. They'll come in maybe one day a week into the office just to, get to see everybody and to brainstorm and to be together. But it's tough, as you probably know, it is tough. When you hire people, the first question they ask is, how much is the salary? The second question they ask is, can I work remote?
that's true, and I've worked as a software engineer
Uh-huh.
all my life, and I'm pretty young. I'm just 23, and I've never went to the office because my first job was, I think it was during COVID,
During
and
COVID.
yeah, and I never even had a chance to work from the office. And for me, it's normal. And I think as years pass, especially the younger generation would. So it's interesting to see how different companies
Yeah.
work with this matter.
We do have the type of work where it's easier to work remotely, right? Because we're, pitching media, we're writing stories, we're crafting messages, we're trying to create opportunities for clients. So it's not like you have to work a production line where you have to be there, or you're a medical professional where you have to be there, right? So it is a business that's conducive. But for me, my old time, upbringing, I like to have an office. Clients, we had a client in on Monday from India. We had a group in from Hong Kong today. To meet in the office, to meet in person, is still something that I think holds a lot of value in today's world.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, in New York, you're around, the biggest businesses. You have, Wall Street, Times Square, and you can actually see it, and you can meet people. So there is definitely something there which can be reproduced remotely. So I can take a bold guess and guess that in 30 years of your experience of you running the company, you probably had some number of setbacks and challenges that you had to overcome. So would you open be open to share some of them
Uh,
and the lessons you took
yeah.
away from them?
Yeah. And, in 30 years, we probably went through three really difficult economic times. So, the PR business is dictated by how the economy is doing, right? Because if consumers aren't buying products and then brands don't have as much money to promote products, PR is one of those line items that generally gets cut during difficult times. So if you take a look at our trajectory, in the late 90s, there was for those who remember, there was a dot-com boom, when all these dot-coms came on the scene. And truthfully, in those days, if you weren't able to build your business by 100 or 200%, then you're doing something wrong. There was just so much business out there, and there was so much money out there. But you know what? In 99, early 2000, there was the dot-com bust, and all that business went away, right? So for us and for other agencies, we had to downsize during that period of time, because that income that we thought would kind of last for a while didn't. So that was a period where you saw a bubble up in terms of the types of business, but then it ultimately went away. And the next real kind of hit was 2001, after 9/11. There was difficult times in terms of companies just trying to grasp with what happened, and not the uncertainty, and not spending money. So from 2001, 2002 are probably toughest years up until 2009. The financial crisis, truthfully, in the last 30 years had the greatest negative impact on our business. So we went from 25 people down to 6 or 7. Because they're just, the financial crisis just crushed everybody. And it started coming back in 2000, I would say 2012, 2013 is about 3 years or so. The lessons that I learned is control your overhead. Sometimes in New York, that's hard because office space is expensive. Control your overhead, manage your expenses, be smart about how you spend money that's not billable back to clients in terms of your travel for business development and things of that nature. What helped us get through all those times was we've always had a core group of clients, 10 or 12 clients that have been with us for a long time. And even though they may have asked us to kind of cut our budgets, they stayed with us during those difficult times. And then we were able to kind of, grow that business once the economy got better. I mean, our years from 2012, 2013 to 2020 were really, really, really good years. So one of the lessons I've learned, it's all cyclical, you know, and it's never going to be as good as you think it is when it's good, and it's never going to be as bad as you think it is when it's bad.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. And it's a great opportunity for me and for listeners as well to learn from your experience as you went through these different periods, economic, cycles and other challenges. That's a very great perspective for, coming from a person who spent their time running the same company and not, switching careers or jobs or fields. Shows you, how it went along. So before we end, do you have some advice or something that you want to share with the listeners that we haven't touched upon yet?
I think so. One of the things in terms of it being in this business, okay, I think being successful in this business, I think you need to have, I think you need to be honest with clients. I think you need to be realistic with them about expectations, because client expectations generally are much more unrealistic than the expectations based upon our experience as practitioners. And a lot of agencies, I'm not going to say lie, but will exaggerate what they're able to do. And truthfully, at the end of the day, if the client has certain expectations, you don't meet those expectations, you're not going to keep those accounts for a long time. So I think from the business standpoint, the other thing from the business standpoint, I've been very fortunate. I've had people who've been with me for many, many years. Hiring really good, qualified, loyal people who are as invested in our client's success and in our success as much as we are. It's the key. It's the key to being successful, is hiring good people, creating a culture that allows them to thrive, compensating them properly, rewarding them, when they can, teaching them so that they, become more broader in their skill sets over the course of the year, being fair and being honest with them. But if you don't have the right people, because you know what? Entrepreneurs think they can do everything. And in the early days, when you're got a couple of accounts, yeah, you can. But then as you grow and you get bigger and you have, 15 accounts and $4 million in billing, et cetera, you can't do it all. So critically important is to hire the right people and really incentivize them to stay with you, because employee turnover, it's really difficult. I mean, our greatest asset right, are the people that come up in the elevator every day and leave in the elevator. I mean, what we are servicing is our expertise, our experience, our relationships, right? So you have to never undervalue that and appreciate, the role that they play. And I think that's been a part of our success. And I think the other thing I would say, two more things. One is uh, you can recognize bad clients from usually the first meeting or call you have with them. And it's really difficult to say no if somebody's going to pay you for your services. But it's the biggest issue that agencies and service companies deal with, because bad clients, number one, suck up all the time and energy. They demoralize the staff. They're going to lead to your greatest level of bad debt. You know what I mean? And it's going to take you away from working on really good clients where there's a lot of upside and there's a lot of growth potential. And then the other thing, because I get asked this question when I lecture quite a bit, is with those kind of graduating from school and wanting to get into the business, just network, man. I mean, you know what I mean? I don't think you're going to get really that job that you want through truthfully through LinkedIn or Indeed or all these, there's thousands of resumes that get sent, right? The way to get a job is make a connection and leverage that connection. That connection will make another connection for you. So I give this advice, and I just saw something in the news that this is a tough job market for entry level kids graduating from college, but just network, leverage the networks, the people that you know at your school, if personally, your internships, and I think that's the way that you're going to be able to get into this business and ultimately be successful with it. So one final thing, because I know you do a lot, and you have Rob on, who is a general in the Army Reserve. I know you've done a lot of military. We've worked with a lot of really interesting accounts and done a lot of interesting work. One of the ones that we're most proud of, we represented the U.S. Military Academy at West Point for 10 years. We actually did their bicentennial celebration in 2002 in terms of coordinating it all, managing the media relations. And we broke some barriers, truthfully, with the Academy. We work for the Association of Graduates, which underwrites a lot of the programs other than, the basic training that you get at West Point. But we convinced, at that time, Dan Christensen was the superintendent. We convinced them to let media come into campus to interview cadets. We had the Today Show there, 2-piece article in Rolling Stone about life as a cadet. And, I'm proud of all the work we've done, but, being able to work with the military academy and to find individuals at the military academy and do some really interesting things, clearly is one of the highlights of the last 31 years.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate everything you shared, including the lessons, the stories, a lot of advice. Good luck with your business. Hopefully, you'll keep growing or whatever your goals are. Maybe it's, staying the same size in terms of the staff, but growing in terms of the sales or whatever is on your mind. Hopefully you'll achieve that. Thank you again for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Great connection. Super excited to
Yeah,
do this.
and you know what? 45 years, I still enjoy it. So that's why I still do it. I still enjoy work with the clients and work with the people and doing things like this. So I'm going to do it for as long as I can.
Great, great.